Boom. Before we go any further, I just wanted to share again the awesome app that is Anchor, because more than anything, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's free. More than anything, there's creation tools that allow you to read and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will actually distribute your podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. I use it. I think everyone should use it to get their point across, make their own podcast, and start earning money from home. So go ahead and download the free Anchor app on your phone or go to anchor.fm to get started. Again, it's Anchor, ANCHOR.FM, just to get started. Thanks. What is going on?
What's up, dude?
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, man, well, to kind of introduce what we talked about last time again. Last time we talked about following up, and again, we're talking about the Happiness Advantage, the book. We're actually almost done with it. We're on principle 5 of 7. And so today we're going to, the chapter is called the Zorro Circle, and it's actually not too extremely long, which is good because then Tanner and I can kind of put in our input. Just to introduce Tanner a little bit, he's one of my good friends for a couple of years now. We've done sales together, and now he now works with Amazon. But he has a lot of good inputs when it comes to like happiness and things because Tanner his whole life has kind of struggled a little bit with anxieties and things like that, and so he's has a lot of good inputs as far as kind of like looking at our well-being mentally and pushing forward. Before we jump in, Tanner, did you want to say anything?
No, I thank you for the intro. If I feel honored.
No, that's good, man. I think you guys will like this one. So the Zorro Circle. So I just only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6 different quotes or things that I liked from this chapter, and then we can dive on right into it. So the first one talks about one of the strongest drivers of both well-being and performance is feeling that we are in control and that we are masters of our own fate at work and at home. And so I think this is ginormous and this is kind of why it's awesome that you're here, Tanner, because I am just barely starting to understand some of this, but my wife has really bad anxieties. But I think a lot of anxieties in life when it comes to our work and also at home comes from feeling that we are not in control. And so like I know for me, like if I'm like, man, it doesn't even matter what I do, life sucks, or like my job's not getting better, or my family life isn't getting better no matter how hard I try. Obviously that doesn't cause happiness. And so what thoughts and ideas do you kind of have on that, and personally as well as like you wanting to be the master of your own fate?
Oh yeah, so I totally agree with that. Like you said, with my anxiety, I grew up basically feeling like I had no control over my life. I would go to work, I would go to school, and the way I would do things was based on how others would feel about me. So I felt like others had control of my life, which led to more anxiety because, like you said, I didn't have control. So
Right.
I was constantly trying to please everyone. So I was never happy. That led to deep depression. And I just didn't really succeed in school. So I stopped doing my assignments. I stopped caring about school, which of course just led down the spiral, just kept going down from there.
Right.
But as I've grown older, and especially doing summer sales with you guys, with you and Shay, I learned a lot about taking control of what I can control, the locus of control. So I think that was really pivotal. Like if somebody
Yeah.
doesn't want to buy the product, it's not always me, but what I can focus on is my attitude, my work ethic, like how many doors I knock, and if I'm going over objections multiple times before I leave the door. So that kind of thing helped with just every aspect of life. So
And you brought up a lot of good pointers here, and we're going to dive into more of those here in a little bit. Um, but let's see how. I mean, how does one go from feeling like they don't have any control to becoming like a master of their own fate, right? Like, because obviously that takes time, and more than anything, it probably takes like good habits, right, to kind of form that.
Oh, definitely.
And what I feel like you were kind of talking about is like breaking things down into things that are just doable, where it doesn't really matter the result. Is
Oh
that
yeah,
correct?
and yeah, for sure. And it also, some people will deal with it their whole life. Even I still have these issues, like at my current job, where I try to not let
Sure.
others control me, but it's all just a constant battle for some people. But just, yeah, taking control
And so,
of things you can't control.
and so, and so I guess one question I have too is like, I mean, because I think everyone does it no matter what, whether you say you do or not. But how do you kind of base your own happiness and thoughts on how you perceive yourself instead of like noticing everyone else around us? You know what I mean? Because like I feel like, for example, my wife, well, not just my wife, a lot of girls in general, they'll base like what a good life is based on like Instagram or what they think that someone's life really is, when everyone has problems down
Hmm.
below, right? What do you think for you? What has been the major factor in like maybe finding your own happiness within instead of kind of having people control your life as far as like, oh, what does that person think of me?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with how I spend my time. So I know social media is huge.
Hmm.
And so before I
Yeah,
spent a lot of time on social media comparing myself to others, which just led to this further
yeah.
anxiety. So I've cut that out of my life by a lot. Like I have a timer on my phone for like Instagram and
Oh,
Facebook.
it's
So like it's in my settings. So when I'm on an app for too long, it like cuts me off of it, which I think is really good because it just helps me to connect deeper with myself. And there's also the self-talk of just building that inner assertiveness where no matter what happens, no matter what people say about you, and you know it's not true, don't let that affect you. And if what they are saying seems to be good criticism, then take that into account and work on building yourself and improving from that feedback rather than like letting it bring you down, if that makes sense.
no, that's great. I think that's a huge gold nugget. I'm gonna take some notes and to kind of read at the very end, but I think putting a timer on your phone sometimes is great. So what I've been doing a lot lately is because I'm very much like you. My mind, um I don't know if it's an anxiety or what it is, but because sometimes it's good thoughts, right? But sometimes it's like negative thoughts too. But like when I'm supposed to be sleeping at nighttime, sometimes my mind is like, man, think about the possibilities. Think about this. Think about how crazy life is. Think about, how this sucks. And then I can't turn my mind off. And so I literally don't let my phone in my room anymore. Um, Obviously I think it helps with a lot of things, but I just don't want to be scrolling through everything and kind of comparing and just wasting my time.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
So, so I think that's one great good nugget. He put a timer on his phone to feel more productive and stuff. So let's jump into the next tidbit here. It says psychologists have found that these kinds of gains in productivity, which is kind of what you were talking about, just barely, gains in productivity, happiness, and health have less to do with how much control we actually have and more with how much control we think we have. I think this kind of boils down to so they find that so basically just to kind of sum this up, it doesn't like it just goes back to kind of like how powerful our minds are, right? It doesn't really matter how much we have, it matters how much we think we have.
Yeah,
And so that's the power of the mind, and that's kind of like overwhelmingly what I see from this book, The Happiness Advantage, is the power of being able to step back and say, okay, where am I struggling? What do I need to do to get better, and to feel like I do have that kind of control. And I think, Tanner, like knowing you for a long time, I think that's one huge advantage that maybe you and I both have is reflection, taking a step back and kind of analyzing. What thoughts and ideas do you have when it comes to that?
yeah, I agree with that. Just having introspection, just looking into ourselves, and really thinking is my life really out of my control? Am I just focusing on things I can't control? Because I always hear people complain about the weather, right? Like, oh, it's going to snow today. Like,
Mm-hmm.
then they have a
Yeah.
terrible attitude. They're just negative about it all day. But in reality, it's
Yeah.
like, well, that's something you can't control. So why put the
Doesn't
energy
matter.
into that about the snowfall when you can just take energy into the beauty of it or like your attitude towards it, rather than being miserable. So that just never made sense to me. Still doesn't.
That's huge. That's huge. I actually, so when I was doing my internship before I did sales, before I'm doing affiliate marketing or anything like that, um, I was I was a recreational management major. My goal was to kind of work my way up in the YMCA, as you know, and probably a lot of my followers do. But I did an internship for free in Indianapolis at a YMCA, and I worked under a guy named Matt, who's this little short, pretty strong dude who was like a no BS type guy. He literally just said whatever's on his mind. He's like sometimes people would show up to work and he goes, "Oh no, not you again," and he would say stuff like that. But the biggest gold nugget I picked up from him, he said, "You only have 100% of your energy every day." He's like, "Why waste it on?" He had different words, but like basically crap. Why waste and expend all your energy on stuff that just don't matter?
Mhm.
And I've thought about that a lot of times, and it's like, man, why not put all, who cares about the weather, what, people might think you about what you're going to wear today, or man, do I have a zit on my face, do I not, like, oh, did that person sound angry at me, did they not, like, I don't know, I just feel like out of that 100% every day that you have as far as your energy, you can take back a lot more of the control that you think you have by just focusing on the things that actually matter.
Yeah.
So I think that was fun. um So it says the most successful people in work and in life are those who have what psychologists call, and this is actually what you just mentioned, an internal locus of control, and that's the term that they use. And basically, what that means is that the belief that their actions have a direct effect on their outcomes. So that's like the opposite of saying like it does not matter what I do, I'm gonna fail no matter what, or it doesn't matter what I do, like, you know, I'm not gonna be happy with whatever result, right?
Mm.
Um, so having an internal locus of control just means like, hey, I believe that if I do this, 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 and that, eventually it'll pay off and get this result, right? Um, so when it comes to like, I know one thing with you, like, um, obviously you were in sales before, and you just and you can probably kind of explain a little bit more than me, but to be honest, you just weren't very happy in that industry and kind of what was going on, and then it seemed like you kind of just had your own internal locus of control, and you just made changes, and you believed that making those changes kind of would affect your outcome. Maybe explain like how you went from feeling like you had zero control, and then what steps you took, and then kind of where you're at now, where you're a lot happier.
Yeah. So in sales, there's a lot of great lessons I learned, but as then I was focusing a lot on the negatives, like, oh man, the service girl
Mm-hmm.
didn't show up to this house, or the customer canceled. And I would just focus on that like all day, and that just negatively
Mm-hmm.
affected me. And what I realized was, hey, maybe sales isn't for me right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so what I did was I just decided to look at other options, and I found a job that I really like right now. If that is that what you're looking for? So, okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
No, that's awesome. So I think one thing overwhelmingly that I want to stress, like, on my YouTube channels, on my podcasts and things like that, is that sales and entrepreneurship isn't always for everyone, or at least not for everyone at the exact time, because everyone finds themselves in different stages of life. And like for Tanner, he kind of realized, man, this might not be where I want to be. I feel like I'm not focusing on what will actually bring me good outcomes. And so he kind of took himself out of that situation and found out what's good for him. And so that's that's so like this whole principle is called the Zorro circle, where like a lot of people just keep going around in the same circle. You kind of broke yourself out of that
Yeah,
circle, and it changed your outcome because you're a lot
and that's
happier.
something that I think that I realized after sales was I was trying to be somebody that I wasn't. So now don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong. Like this kind of sounds like a fixed mindset of, oh, I'm not the man for sales, but sometimes you have to realize your own limitations. in order to
Sure.
figure out what's best for you. And I think that's what happened with me there was I had these big expectations about what I wanted to be with sales, and I could sell pretty well when I was really into
Yeah.
it, but like you said, I wasn't happy. So I just discovered, like,
Yeah. What does it
yeah, so like,
matter?
why does this matter if I'm just miserable and not even enjoying the process? So,
I, I think it definitely goes back to a thousand, like basically a couple chapters ago, I talked about like your why, and you basically have to ask yourself, why am I doing this 1,000 times until it actually comes down to like when it actually has meaning. And so like you on the outs, like when you look at a lot of people like who are successful in sales or maybe on business online or who make a lot of money, you're like, man, I really want that. You think that that's your why, but then when you break it down 1,000 times, it might not actually be worth all the effort and stress.
yeah,
And I think that's kind of where you hit, where you're like, man, I think I wanted this at the time, but when you really broke it down and kind of pondered your own life, you're like, man, maybe that's not the best, and that's completely
yeah,
fine. That happens to a lot of people. I mean, I would have never thought I was in sales. I used to hate sales guys. And I think just life takes you in different directions after you start to kind of think, what do I want for myself and why?
for
Right.
sure.
We're just gonna we got three more little sections before we end this up here. It says experiments show that when people are primed to feel high levels of distress, the quickest to recover are those who can identify how they are feeling and put those feelings into words. Now, I think that kind of goes back to what we were saying before, is like there's been many, many times where you and I would just jump on a call or talk for hours and just saying, where are we currently? Where do we want to be? And then eventually kind of like how we want to get there. And that's just inner reflection and then trying to identify how we feel. And I think the hardest thing for a lot of people, and I know maybe, and hopefully you can enlighten us a little bit about this. Sometimes it's hard to putting it into words,
Yeah,
though.
definitely. Um, yeah, I've always been vocal about my inner struggles, which has been kind of a fault of mine, but I've gotten better. But it is very therapeutic to put how you're feeling into words because you can have outside perspectives. Like my mom is really good. I'll call her
Mm-hmm.
or I'll talk to her about my issues,
Sure.
and she always has these nuggets of truth that just, and she's always like, well, this is what you're saying. Is that actual reality or is that all in your head? Like those kinds of comments. And I'm like, you know what? I think you're right. I'm implying or assuming something that's not reality because no
Mm-hmm.
one's told me this. Like say oh, my boss doesn't like me at work, but has he told me that personally, or am I just projecting it? So like
Yeah.
that's just been something that's really cool to just realize.
Shout out to all the
Yeah,
moms out
like
there.
moms
Shout out
have
to the
good
moms.
advice, you know. So
No, they do. And I think that's huge. Like, whenever you're trying to put these things into words, you don't want to put it like, oh, I mean, maybe it does help for some people, like on the internet or something, but I think a lot of times when you try to identify and put those feelings into words, you need to do it with someone that loves you and that can actually give you good feedback. That's not going to be terrible.
yeah,
Because I think sometimes if you go and talk to someone about this that kind of has like maybe um, I don't know, like for example, if I had like a lucrative insight, with you, maybe that they have some kind of different motive than trying to help you in your best interest. You know what I mean? I think that's sometimes what happens too. Is like maybe a different company, you ask them like, "Hey, I'm struggling with this. Like, I don't know if I should sell or not, or maybe I should do something that makes me happy." They're like, obviously they have lucrative motives where they're going to be like, "No, just come with us. It'll save your life." But really, maybe when you talk to a family member or a close friend, like they'll give you good advice that doesn't have any kind of like attachments
right.
to it.
Yeah, that kind of ties back to the locus of control. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like if we're I actually lost my train of thought. Oh, shit.
That's okay.
Yeah, I guess we'll just continue. I'll probably think of it later.
Yeah, well, yeah. When you do, just shout it out and interrupt. But I think this is the thing that I noticed whenever. So, just a side note, everyone. Tanner and I went to Sacramento in California, and that's where we kind of sold our first years together, and it was a lot of fun. But I saw a big change in Tanner whenever things were starting to get hard. He no longer focused on how many sales, how many, um, basically the outcome of it. He was focusing on like the small things that he could control. Like, and so right here, this is kind of what it talks about. It says, by tackling one small challenge at a time, a narrow circle that slowly expands outward, we can relearn that our actions do have a direct effect on our outcomes, that we are largely the masters of our own fates. And so, literally, that's for me personally what helps me feel productive and happy and feel like I'm actually making progress is lists. So, like, I have like a list of things I want to get done. And whenever I can mark those things off, like, they're little small challenges at a time. But whenever I can, I don't know, it's just like a huge, not adrenaline rush, but like dopamine rush when I'm like knocking these things off, like, because I feel like I'm progressing, um, and then I'm actually mastering
Yeah.
myself. But I know that you kind of do that too. What was kind of the process in your mind from going, do I have zero control to let me focus on these
Yeah, for
things?
sure. So it brings me back to my mission. I know you've mentioned this before, that you're a
Yeah,
member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or Mormons, and so am I.
yeah,
So on my ecclesiastical mission, that's what one of the main focuses was, make setting goals for yourself and your companion or your teaching buddy. And once you get through those goals, like, that dopamine hit is huge, and that's stuff that you can control. So it's why do we let ourselves be in a prison, per se, of things out of our control? Like, it just limits what we can be. So yeah, totally. Like, making lists has helped me a lot in gaining control. Like, pretty simple. Yeah.
no, I think so. Yeah, I think there's a reason why a lot of people who go on, church missions or voluntary work like that, um, they say it's the happiest time of their life, right? Because they're getting things done for others. I think that's huge too. Not always just thinking about
Mm-hmm.
yourself, you know. So the last thing before we kind of do our last recap here, is just small successes can add up to major achievements. All it takes is drawing the first circle in the sand. And so, overwhelmingly, man, I watch so much YouTube on all these people who are successful marketers, Gary Vee, Russell Brunson, all these people that, to be honest, I don't want that kind of level of success. I don't want to be that kind of crazy. I want to make good money in my life, but more so that I can hang out with my family and kind of like not stress out about what's going on in the world. um, but every single time when people ask, like, what does it take? All they say is just small things, like small tasks, but consecutively. And I think that's true with church things. Like, if you want to feel like more spiritual, maybe bring out the Bible, bring out whatever book that you're looking into. Like, for us, it's the Book of Mormon, and read that every day, maybe just for 5 or 10 minutes. If you're wanting to learn a new skill, start learning that for 5 to 10 minutes a day, and then all of a sudden, boom, you can do these crazy major event achievements that started from just something small, but
Yeah.
consecutively.
Yeah, it's like,
So,
that's that old
wow.
saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? uh, yeah, exactly.
No, it's huge. I don't know, and I think for me, like, that's why I love doing these podcasts, because it gives me something to kind of reflect on and improve myself, and hopefully give some other people some good insight too. But it's something that I can do that makes me feel like I'm helping out and growing in some kind of way, and I think that that's how I can start to meet some of my own personal goals and help others meet theirs as well. But before we kind of conclude here, what in the past couple of years have you been doing, consecutively, like, in some of your goals for the next coming up year as 2020 comes to an end, daily, that you can do that maybe it will be a major achievement?
Yeah, so lately I've been focusing a lot on, and I've done this in the past, but I haven't. I'll do it for a few months, and then I'll kind of fall away. Then I'll do it again. But I'm really focusing on just going to bed at a decent time, waking up at like 6:30 every
Huge.
morning. I'm working out every
Yeah.
day. I'm working on cutting out a lot of sugar in my life because I'm a big sweet tooth, but that's been very terrible.
Yeah.
And then cutting caffeine out of my life. So every day I have this routine of where I wake up, I say my prayers, I read my scriptures, I make my breakfast, I go to the gym, then I come home, I kind of relax and think for a little bit, kind of ponder on the day, and then I go to work if I do have work that day. It's just getting in that morning routine for me has been huge in gaining control, because when you control the beginning of your day, I feel like the rest of your day you have more accountability and you feel more in control. So
Yeah, it's kind of like that one video of that guy in the Marines or whatever, where he said, if you want to have like a successful life, just make your bed every morning.
yeah,
It's like something so simple, but like it kind of helps you have a better day
yeah,
altogether.
because
So I just kind of wanted to do a. Go
oh, I
ahead.
was just
Go
saying
ahead.
with that, you when you make your bed in the morning, most of us don't want to make our bed in the morning. So you start the day off doing something
No,
you don't
no,
want to do. So you're already fighting against that
yeah, it's
natural
huge.
tendency to be lazy. So
No, that's true. For some reason, making the bed is the hardest thing. I'm like, because and this is just a side note. I'm like, why would I make it sometimes? I'm just gonna get right back in
yeah,
it. But it's just one thing that I mean, my wife just. I will say this, man. I do think um, having a spouse or a significant other makes you a lot better person sometimes, because a lot of the strengths my wife has are a lot of my weaknesses. So she helps me out a lot, and I tell her that all the time. And it's a good thing to remind your spouse or girlfriend or mom, in that case, as Valentine's Day comes up, let them know how much you love them. But just a quick recap. Tanner had some good notes. He said he puts a timer on his phone, so he's not letting all these external influences like change, how he feels about being a master of his own fate. Consistency, guys, every day with small things can make major achievements. Go to bed early. Try to take more control over your life and not focus so much on these results that you can't really control. And then also, you only have 100% energy in a day. You got to focus on that energy on things that actually matter, instead of just like small things that absolutely are kind of just taking away from the things that are important. So that was principle 5, guys. The Zorro circle of the happiness advantage. We only have principle 6, which is called the 20-second rule. And then we have principle 7, and then we'll be jumping into another book or talking a little bit more about affiliate marketing. But Tanner, I wanted to thank you for jumping on. You're my first guest on here, and it's been
yeah,
fun to have you
appreciate
on.
you. Thanks, Logan.
All right, guys. Yeah, no problem. Well, if you guys are wanting to learn more about affiliate marketing, you guys can jump on my website, www.learn15daychallenge.com. Also, you can join my free Facebook group for if you guys ever have any questions. And then I'm also putting all of these I'm getting them put on my YouTube channel as well. So if you guys can't always use the podcast, you can jump on my YouTube channel, which is the Affiliate Movement as well. But if nothing else, we will see you guys in the next one, and stay happy.